Welcome. We're looking today at one of the greatest prophecies in the Bible. It's a prophecy that was given by a woman, by Hannah. Hannah had prayed desperately that she could have a son, and she prayed that she would be able to give that son to God, that he would live a pure life as someone dedicated to God, serving God at his tabernacle, the house of God. In due course, that boy, Samuel, was born, and Hannah handed him over for the work of God. And on the day when she handed her little boy over for the work of God, Hannah prayed and spoke a prophecy. And that prophecy is what we're looking at today. It's 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. You may know the book better as the book of 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. My name is Keith Simons. I'm a Bible teacher from England. I present these talks on how to understand the King James Bible. Usually we look at a whole chapter in each of these talks, but there's so much in 1 Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 2 that I thought it better just to look at the first section today, and in the next talk hopefully we'll look at the rest of the chapter. As always, we'll be looking at it verse by verse and word by word and using the King James Bible. So let's look at verse 1 firstly, as we usually do. It begins, and Hannah prayed and said. Yes, Hannah prayed, and yet this prayer is described, by me at least, as a prophecy. Why is it a prophecy? It's a prophecy because Hannah is seeing beyond the current situation in Israel. This was a time of tremendous trouble in Israel. It was the time spoken of in the book of Judges, 400 years. 400 years when Israel's people were constantly in trouble with enemies, when the nations on every side of Israel were attacking it fiercely. Occasionally God would raise up a military leader called a judge for the nation, and Israel's men would go out to war and God would give them the victory over their enemies. And those were good times in this 400 years, because when there was peace from the enemies and Israel's people had seen how God looked after them, they would turn back to the true God. But at other times, they turned away from the true God. They worshipped idols and images and false gods. And even at the temple, the tabernacle rather, it was a tent that existed before the temple. At the tabernacle, where the priests were, people were not properly loyal to God. Even there, we read of the priests that they were involved in sexual sin, that they were stealing from people's sacrifices. Yet Hannah prophesied in that she saw beyond this. She spoke in the power of the Holy Spirit as to what God was doing in that broken nation. She saw beyond it. Israel had never had a king, never had a government. And yet she spoke about the King of Israel, about God's anointed who would rule over the nation and be the judge of the people, that the Lord would judge right across the world and give honour to his anointed, the Messiah. So Hannah is prophesying. She's not just prophesying in the sense that she's speaking clever words or inspired words. She's prophesying in the sense that God has shown her what he is doing in Israel, and she is declaring it. This prophecy had a tremendous impact on the future of the nation. And let me just read you the first few lines of it. We're in 1 Samuel 2, 1 Samuel 2, verse 1. My heart rejoiceth in the Lord. Mine horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation. What does that remind you of? Well, if you're a Christian, it should remind you of Mary's song, the Magnificat, in Luke chapter 1, verses 46 to 55. And Mary's song is very similar to Hannah's prophecy. It's similar because Mary too rejoiced in the Lord. Mary too saw the way that the Lord was turning round the situation in her nation. So this prophecy inspired later generations. But let's look at the words of it then. Let's go into this verse in a little more detail. My heart rejoiceth in the Lord. Mine horn is exalted in the Lord. A horn. Well, that's a word picture. Israel was an agricultural country. Of course, bulls have horns, which they use to fight. So the horn became a word picture often in the Bible for strength. Hannah says, deep within me, my heart is rejoicing in God, and my strength is lifted up. God has made me strong and powerful. My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies. When does your mouth enlarge, become larger? Well, it becomes larger when you open it to speak. Oh, there was a time in the first chapter when Hannah, she couldn't speak. Chapter 1, verse 13. She couldn't speak because she was in such distress. But now God had opened her mouth to speak over her enemies, to speak against those who were enemies of God, those who were causing trouble in her nation. She could speak because she said, I rejoice in thy salvation. In God's salvation. Salvation means rescue and safety. Oh, she saw that God was rescuing her nation. God was providing a king for her nation who could defeat her enemies. That's why Hannah could open her mouth and speak against the enemies. Once she had been silent at the very thought of another woman who laughed at her. But now she could speak with an open mouth and declare God's salvation. God is the one who rescues. Verse 2. There is none holy as the Lord, for there is none beside thee, neither is there any rock like our God. Holy as the Lord. To be holy means to be pure and perfect. God is pure and perfect. And there is no one like him. There is none beside thee. It's not like the other gods, the gods of the heathens, the gods of the nations are equal to the true God, the God who made heaven and earth. No, they're nothing in comparison to him. Even the greatest and most holy of the angels are nothing compared to the Lord our God. He is great and mighty. He ruled as king even before creation began, and he will rule as king again in his new creation over the new Jerusalem. And Hannah adds, neither is there any rock like our God. Rock. When we stand on solid rock, we know that it's stable, it's firm. So the word rock became a word picture for a place of security and safety. And God's people found that their rock was God. There was no other God, so they could depend on their God, the true God. He definitely would defeat every enemy. He definitely would defeat death and the devil and the fear of death and hell. And even though Israel seemed such a small and such a weak nation, when they turned to God, God would look after them. God would defend them. God would protect them. And Hannah turns now in verse 3 from speaking to God in praise to speaking to the enemies, but she's still speaking the word of God. She is declaring the word of God over them. What was it she said in verse 1 she was doing? My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies. Verse 3. Talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. Some people think that Hannah was speaking to Peninnah, the woman who mocked her in chapter 1. No, she's not. And the proof of it that she's not is the word your there, your mouth. Because in the King James Bible, when you see thou or thee, you know you're talking about someone speaking to one person. But you or your, that is speaking to more than one person. So Hannah now is speaking to the enemies, plural. She's telling them, don't be proud, don't be arrogant, because for the Lord is a God of knowledge. God knows. God knows your proud words, but God also knows your sin, and God knows your weakness, and God is your judge. He is the judge of all the earth. And by him, says Hannah, actions are weighed. Think about the word weighed. Weighed in the balances. That's a picture we have from the old-fashioned balances, the old-fashioned weighing machines of justice. God is a God of justice. God is a God who judges rightly, who judges properly, who judges fairly. He doesn't favour the wealthy. No one can bribe God. No one can persuade God to act wrongly. By him, actions are weighed. His actions are weighed. His actions are right and proper. He will act against the evil people who cause such trouble for God's people. He will defend his own people. And when you think of Israel, with all that trouble and all those enemies attacking them constantly, and yet Hannah saw beyond that. She saw beyond that to what God was doing. And that's what we see in the next 4 verses, verses 4 to 7. Let's take those verses together and then let's look at them separately. So, verse 4 then. What about the people who trust in their own strength, the powerful men, the strong men with their mighty weapons? The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. The bows of the mighty men. This is bows as in bows and arrows. Okay, don't think of old-fashioned weapons. Think of powerful weapons that made people deeply afraid in battle. An arrow can shoot you from a great distance and injure you terribly or kill you. And these bows are being shot or fired by mighty men. If their bows are broken, those mighty men have to run away. Those mighty men are made weak. The bows being broken is a picture of the mighty men losing their strength. And think of the weak people trying to run away and stumbling. They that stumbled are girded with strength. God is giving strength to the weak, and he is defeating the powerful. Same story again, verse 2. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry ceased, so that the barren hath borne 7, and she that hath many children is waxed feeble. This is about wealth. Those who were full, those who were wealthy, those who had everything that they wanted to eat, now they've become desperate. They've had to make themselves servants, make themselves slaves just to get bread. And they that were hungry ceased. Those who struggled with hunger are no longer hungry. And we look at a barren woman, a woman like Hannah herself who could not have children. And she's now given birth to 7. Well, Hannah hadn't given birth to 7 children yet. She did have more children. But she's seeing prophetically how God takes a woman who has no children and gives her children. But the one who has confidence in her wealth, she that hath many children, is waxed feeble. She thought that she had success forever with her many children, but those children died. Or maybe the children grew up and didn't care about her, and she is left alone and weak. Why? Because the strong and the wealthy person is defeated, and the weak and the poor person is given success. Okay, let's pause there. Why is Hannah painting the picture of the powerful person being defeated and the weak person succeeding? Because powerful people in her day and age were wicked people. Because powerful people were using their power in the wrong way to cause pain and difficulty and trouble for people. And so Hannah, with her word pictures here, is painting a picture of the day when God's Messiah, God's King rules, and when every evil force is defeated. When people who thought they were so powerful face the punishment for their sins. But the humble people, the poor people, the people who simply trusted in God and waited for Him to act, God's raised them up. God's given them strength and power. Okay, this continues. Verse 6. The Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave and bringeth up. People who trust in themselves. They think that they are great. They've forgotten that they're going to die. And here in the word picture, the Lord is killing and He's making alive. He brings a person down to the grave. He raises a person up, bringeth up in resurrection. But what's it doing here? Well, we don't normally talk about God killing anyone. Why not? Because death and the grave are enemies of God. God only does what is right and good. But the word picture has taken it beyond this, because it wants to show us that God has power even over His enemies. He has power even over death and the grave. Think of the effect of death. For a wicked person, the effect of death may be an enemy of God, but the effect of death for a wicked person is only to bring that person before the judgment of God. And for God's people who trust in Him, who've turned from their evil deeds, what's the effect of death for them? It's to bring them closer to God. It's to bring them to heaven. Even death, the enemy of God, becomes the servant of God in bringing His judgments. And even the grave which is like a prison for dead people, It becomes God's servant in bringing about God's judgments, in taking that wicked person's spirit to hell, in taking the righteous person, the person trusting God, the person who's turned from sin, to heaven. The Lord maketh poor, Hannah continues, verse 7. The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He bringeth low and lifteth up. Do you not see? You might fight for your own riches, for your own importance, for your own power. God brings that to an end. God can take poor and low and weak people, and he will do it. He will give them honour. He will give them honour because when his Messiah reigns, when his King reigns, it won't be a case of people fighting for themselves. The powerful people who trust in strength and wealth and self and importance, they won't be the great people. It will be the people who humbly trust God who will be the great people in that future age when Messiah reigns and all is put right. So who is the Lord making rich? His people. Who is the Lord lifting up? His people. Who is the Lord making poor and bringing low? The wicked people. It's God's judgment. But Hannah doesn't just stop there, and in a verse that's repeated in Psalm 113, Hannah declares, He, the Lord, raiseth the poor out of the dust, and lifteth up the beggar from the dunghill. What could be a worse situation for a poor person than having to sit in dust? I know, it's for them to be a beggar, and having to sit on a dunghill, on the waste of animals. God can take a person from that situation, from the most desperate situation in life, and what will he do with that person? He will set them among princes, and to make them inherit the throne of glory. That person, the poorest and most desperate person upon earth, in Hannah's prophecy, becomes a prince and sits on a glorious throne, ruling in power. Why? Because that person trusted in God in his calamity, in his distress, in his deepest troubles. And God sees the true value of that person. Other people mocked him. Other people said, what do you think of a man who can only sit on dust, or whose place is the dunghill? But God knows the hearts of people. God is the judge of people, and the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set the world upon them. The pillars of the earth? Does the earth have pillars? Well, we know that physically the earth is a globe. It doesn't have pillars. It doesn't have supports like that. But as it says elsewhere in the Bible, God hangs the world on nothing. Yes, this world does have supports. And those supports are not physical supports like physical pillars, like physical columns. They are what God establishes. And what God establishes in this world is strong and cannot be defeated. And when God chooses his people and gives them a place of honour and importance, not because they're going to use it proudly, but because they humbly depend upon God and they want the sort of good world that God wants, and God establishes them. He establishes their place and he keeps them safe. Verse 9, he, the Lord, will keep the feet of his saints. Keep the feet. Keep them from slipping. Keep them from falling. Make sure that they stand securely. And the wicked shall be silent in darkness. Or once Hannah had to be silent in her desperate prayer, but now the Lord has opened her mouth, and in the same way he's going to open the mouth of all his saints. Not special people, but holy people. Holy because they've turned from their evil deeds. They've placed their trust in God, and in their troubles, which were great, they depended on God to save them and to rescue them. But the wicked shall be silent in darkness. Maybe a suggestion of the darkness of the grave, maybe a suggestion of their utter defeat. Why? Because by strength shall no man prevail. These men thought they could prevail, that they could overcome by their physical strength, by their importance, by their selfish attitudes, by their proud attitudes. They thought they'd made success for themselves, but the Bible declares, and Hannah declares, by strength shall no man prevail. So how do we prevail? How do we overcome? Only by the power of God, only by trusting in God, only by turning to God. What a terrible judgment shall the wicked people face. In verse 10, the adversaries, the enemies of the Lord, shall be broken into pieces. They're crushed, they're destroyed, all their hopes are utterly ruined, and it takes so little from God to defeat them. Out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. The thunder sounds, and we shake with fear at the noise, at the power of it. But that's only a sound. That's only a noise. And yet that is enough to break into pieces the adversaries of the Lord. Those who oppose God are utterly defeated at the mere voice of God like thunder. The Lord shall judge the ends of the earth. Hannah sees beyond a nation. She sees further and further afield. She sees even to the very ends of the earth that God is the judge of every person. And that's the meaning of these word pictures. In the end, that's why these powerful people were brought low. That's why the weak people were given strength. Because the Lord shall judge the ends of the earth. He is establishing his Messiah's rule. And he's beginning now. Because he shall give strength unto his king. That was Samuel, the little boy of Hannah. That was his great work in life, to appoint Israel's king. And God will be the strength of Israel's king. But beyond that, into future ages, he shall exalt the horn of his anointed. Remember what we said about horn, meaning strength. God will give strength to his anointed. The anointed means the king. It's especially referring to the ceremony with oil, which Samuel himself carried out 2 times, to pour oil on the head of a king and to appoint him to rule. God is going to give the strength to his future king, the Messiah, and the future king will indeed rule all nations and rule forever and forevermore. No wonder Mary spoke a very similar prophecy about her son. Verse 11, and Elkanah, that's the father of Samuel and the husband of Hannah, went to Ramah to his house. And the child did minister unto the Lord before Eli the priest. The child here, Samuel, who we've been hearing about, the son of Hannah, left behind there at the tabernacle to serve God under the supervision of this elderly priest, Eli. What's going to happen to him? What's going to happen to the priesthood among whom he serves? Can he continue in this pure and holy life when he sees all the corruption that is around him? We'll find out more next time when we hope to look at the remainder of 1 Samuel chapter 2. In a moment or two, I'm going to read you the section that we've just been studying. But first, my email address, 333kjv@gmail.com. Please do write, tell me where in the world you are, and if you're in the United States, which of the states. That's 333kjv@gmail.com. My name again is Keith Simons, and I'm a Bible teacher from England. So here is the whole of 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. And Hannah prayed and said, My heart rejoiceth in the Lord, mine horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation. There is none holy as the Lord, for there is none beside thee, neither is there any rock like our God. Talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogance come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry ceased. So that the barren hath borne 7, and she that hath many children is waxed feeble. The Lord killeth, and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave, and bringeth up. The Lord maketh poor, and maketh rich. He bringeth low, and lifteth up. He raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth up the beggar from the dunghill, to set them among princes, and to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set the world upon them. He will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for by strength shall no man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. The Lord shall judge the ends of the earth. And he shall give strength unto his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. And Elkanah went to Ramah to his house, and the child did minister unto the Lord before Eli the priest.